Welcome to Make Your Money Matter with Brad Barrett, the show that aims to change the way you think about wealth management. Brad is a financial advisor, established radio host, and author of Retire Right. He is a managing director and partner at One Capital Management, an SEC-registered investment advisory firm managing over $4 billion for clients across the nation. Brad and his team are dedicated to helping clients protect and preserve their assets so they can reach their investment and retirement goals. And now, your host of Make Your Money Matter, Brad Barrett.
Welcome in to Make Your Money Matter. I'm your host, Brad Barrett. I'm also managing director and partner here at One Capital Management. And today on the show, we're going to do a little story time. Now, wherever you're listening or whatever time you're listening, whether it's the morning or midday or at night, grab that cup of coffee, grab that nightcap, and follow along because we're going to talk about really a larger concept that I share often around compound interest. And we're going to use it through a story, a fable, if you will, to discuss the importance of this for your overall investment life, as well as your overall financial planning life. And we're also going to talk about compound interest in the existence of a mathematical equation, something that I want each of you to understand when it comes to knowing how long it's going to take for your money to double. So stay tuned. But before we get started, make sure to go to our website at onecapital.com. There you can download and subscribe to the Make Your Money Matter podcast. You can also download our podcast on Spotify or SoundCloud or the Google or iPhone app on your phone. And as always, I recommend, leave us a message, leave us a review. It helps us share the word to others. And with that, let's get started. Now, I did want to say to all my weekly listeners out there, I apologize. For the first time in now 4 years of doing this show weekly, we actually haven't done a show in the past 3, maybe even 4 weeks now. I got to talk to my producer about the timeline. And I want to apologize, but I also want to share with you, as you guys all know, being a financial advisor, the first quarter is always pretty hectic. And this quarter was just the same. It was just a lot of reviews and a lot of meetings that I always want to make sure I devote my attention to my clients first. And in the middle of that couple weeks, I was also pretty sick. And I think a lot of us have been having that going around. And so I just sounded terrible for like 2 weeks. And I figured, you know what? Let's rest the voice, rest the body. And so I'm coming at you today, living well and strong. And I want to appreciate you all for listening every week. But as I mentioned at the top of the show, I want to have a little story time today. Now, bear in mind, I am well aware there's no visual on this podcast, but I want you to walk through and envision with me as I go through this story. And it's the fable of a grain of rice. And as I mentioned before, we're talking in the concept of compound interest. So stay tuned today. Now, long ago in India, there was a Raja. And this Raja believed he was wise and fair, like many of old that they think this way. And the people in his province were rice farmers. And the Raja declared that everyone must give nearly all of their rice to him. And he said this, "I will store the rice safely so that in a time of famine, everyone will have rice to eat and no one will go hungry." Now, each year, the Raja's rice collectors gathered nearly all the people's rice and they carried it away to the royal storehouses. Now, the rice grew over time. And over time, the ministers would implore him, "Your Highness, let us open the royal storehouses and give the rice to the people as you promised." And the Raja kept saying, "No, how do I know how long this famine will last?" That happened to be in this town at the time. "I must have the rice for myself. Promise or no promise, a Raja must not go hungry." Sound like a power-hungry person? We've seen this before. Now, time went on, and the people grew more and more hungry, but the Raja would not give out the rice. Now, one day, the Raja ordered a feast for himself. Can you imagine that? Now, a servant who was leading an elephant from a royal storehouse to the palace carrying 2 full baskets of rice. On the way, there was a village girl named Rani. And Rani saw that a trickle of rice was falling from one of the baskets. Now, quickly, she jumped up and walked along beside the elephant, catching the falling rice in her skirt. She was clever, she was wise, and she began to make a plan. Now, at the palace, the guard cried, "Halt, thief! Where are you going with that rice?" He was speaking to Rani. And Rani goes, "I'm not a thief. This rice fell from one of the baskets, and I'm returning it now to the Raja." She was clever. She got caught, but she was clever. Now, when the Raja heard about Rani's good deed, quote unquote, he asked his ministers to bring her before him. "I wish to reward you for returning what belongs to me," the Raja said to Rani. "Ask me for anything and you shall have it." So Rani goes, "Well, Your Highness, I do not deserve any reward at all, but if you wish, you may give me 1 grain of rice. Remember, she was basically catching the falling rice, and when she got caught, she basically said, well, wait a minute, I'm bringing it to him. Very clever. But she did say this. Again, not deserving it, but you can give me 1 grain of rice. And the guy goes, Raja goes, only 1 grain of rice? Surely you will allow me to reward you more plentifully as a Raja should. Very well, said Rani. If it pleases your highness, you may reward me in this way. Today, you will give me a single grain of rice. Then, each day for 30 days, you will give me double the rice you gave me the day before. Thus, tomorrow, you will give me 2 grains of rice. The next day, 4 grains of rice, and so on for 30 days. Now, this seems to be a modest reward, said the Raja, but you shall have it. Now, friends, stay with me. I know we're in the middle of the story here, but we're getting to a point. As this was going on, Rani was presented with a single grain of rice, just as she asked. Then the next day, Rani was presented with 2 grains of rice. The following day, 4 grains of rice, so on and so forth. Now, on the 16th day, as you do the math here, Rani was presented with a big bag containing 32,768 grains of rice. Now, altogether at this point, she had enough for 2 full bags. And the Raja at this point started thinking, man, this doubling up adds up to more rice than I expected. But surely her reward won't amount to much more. He was ignorant, right? Now, fast forward, on the 27th day, 32 Brahma bulls were needed to deliver 64 baskets of rice to Rani. Now, at this point, the Raja was like deeply troubled, okay? He goes, 1 grain of rice has grown very great indeed, but I shall fulfill the reward to the end as a Raja should. Now, on the 30th and final day, 256 elephants crossed their province carrying the contents of the last 4 royal storehouses for Rani. The Raja had no more rice to give. And then obviously Raja goes, well, what will you do with this rice, said the Raja, now that I have none? And Rani goes, this is what I love. I shall give it to all the hungry people, and I shall leave a basket of rice for you too, Raja, if you promise from now on not to take more than you need. The Raja goes, I promise. And for the rest of his days, the Raja was truly wise and fair, as a Raja should be.
Stay connected. Get frequent updates on the show. Follow Brad Barrett and Make Your Money Matter on most social media platforms. And catch full episodes of Make Your Money Matter streaming now on our YouTube channel. To schedule your no-obligation appointment, go to onecapital.com or call 805-410-5454.
Now, I know late in this parable and this story was a story like old, the story of old, as we say, where it was a guy not seeing what was really going on, then being shown the light, if you will, by this village girl, Rani. But at the same time, what I want to focus on is Rani's intuition and really her mathematical prowess when it comes to what she's actually asking for. And I want to phrase it differently this way. If I were to ask you right now, and I've shared this before, by the way, so for those of you who've heard this, you can kind of glean to some other episodes as well, but it's really the power of compound interest. This whole thing, what Rani was doing was the power of compound interest. Now, let's move from grains of rice to a penny, for example. Now, right now, wherever you are, hear me loud. If I were to offer you right now a penny a day, doubling every day for the next 30 days, or $1 million right now and that's it, which would you take? Obviously, if you listen to the parable, you're probably thinking, well, I kind of know where this is going, Brad. I should probably take the penny. And here's what I want to share about this, because this is where I think a lot of my clients and a lot of my experience has been when it comes to our money and what we see on things, because we all want to get rich fast. Like, that's the whole thing. We want to build wealth fast, and all the marketing and everything around us is telling me we're doing it wrong, or you're doing it wrong, and this, that, and the other. And I say this week in and week out, and I wanted to use this parable, this story, and then this analogy of a penny doubling versus $1 million as a good, kind of contrast and backdrop to why we need to be thinking longer term. Now, I would argue that, 30 days isn't exactly long term, but what I wanted to think about is extrapolate that in 2 years. Then all of a sudden you're like, well, man, Brad, that's a long time. Well, yes, but we have a long time. We're blessed with a good amount of time on this earth. And the reality is building true wealth and doing it right with a sustainable approach, a risk-adjusted approach was another factor in this whole thing, is right. Now, as you'll notice when I bring this up, right, obviously the penny a day doubling for the next 30 days is more than $1 million. In fact, specifically, a penny a day doubling for the next 30 days is $5.3 million. That's what you will have at the end of the 30 days. I want to repeat that. $5.3 million. If those of you who said, well, I just had bird in the hand, right? Brad, I'll just take $1 million. You would have lost out on almost $4.3 million of growth. But here's the kicker, okay? The growth to get to that 5.3 number really doesn't even start accelerating until around day 22. Now, let's move from days and go to years. Those of you right now putting into your retirement plan, for example, you're kind of thinking, man, it's taking me a long time to get to 100,000, 150,000. And if I show a client, in fact, I was doing this last week with a couple clients, they were, 20, 25 years on within their career, and they're like, hey, $150,000, $200,000 in their retirement plan. But then all of a sudden, the last 5 or 10 years, that went to like 400, 350, 400. And they're like, what's interesting? Why? Well, compound interest is now working for you. And back to the analogy, let me get this. You don't even get past $100 in the penny doubling until day 15. Think about that. And then you finally pass the $1 million mark, which is the original offer or the contrast of the offer, until day 28. So here's the key takeaway for today. From all of this, you want to look at it from this way, is to start investing early and often. The biggest gains in returns always happen later in life. And I know that doesn't sound like something you want to hear today, and I apologize, but that's the truth. That's the truth that we see it. The biggest gains in returns always happen later in life. If you start investing in your portfolio today, and let's say you earn like a hypothetical modest 6% return, that might not seem like a lot of money today because you're like, oh, my friends are earning 10 and 15 and so on and so forth. But in 30 years, earning a 6% return on average every year throughout your life, you'll start seeing huge returns later in life as you start to approach retirement. Remember, investing is a long-term endeavor. You shouldn't be looking, to double your money in 3 to 5 years. I feel like someone needs to hear that. I want to re-say that. You shouldn't be looking to double your money in 3 to 5 years. If you are, be careful, because likely what's happening is you're getting spoken to subliminally, not even realizing it, whether it's through a social media post, some guy that you got suckered into paying $20 a month on a subscription, trying to sell you some passive income strategy or so on and so forth. And I'm not saying that you can't, to be fair, because everyone's heard of the stories of guys who, struck it rich on a certain investment or just right place, right time. So again, obviously it's a never say never environment, but the probability, friends, is what I'm speaking to here. So again, work with the odds that you have. If you're healthy and able and have a job like you all do, okay, make sure you're looking from a long-term perspective. You should be looking to grow your money over time. And I want to bring up this rule, this math I brought up in the top of the show. It's the rule of 72. Now, many of you, if I've been, talking with you before, you've heard me say this before, but it's a great and simple guide to learn. Well, Brad, okay, you're saying long-term, but like how long? Like what does that mean, okay? So the rule of 72 is a great and simple guide to learn how long it will take to double your investment, okay? So it's a great tool for every investor, okay? It helps you quickly understand, again, how long it takes your money to double at a certain interest rate. So you simply take the number 72 and divide it by the interest rate. So hypothetically, let's say you're earning a 9% rate of return on average. So you take 72 divided by 9, the output is 8. That is 8 years it will take for your money to double. So let's say you put in $100, okay? And you're earning 9%. You do the math on that, whatever the initial investment was, all right? You take 72 divided by 9 in my hypothetical example, that $100 would become $200 in 8 years. And you're thinking like, Brad, whoa, dude, that's a long time for not that much. But that was an example on $100. Imagine 100,000, 200,000. My point in saying this is, as you start adding to it as well. Remember, one of the things I say all the time is the reason why the majority of Americans, like 90% plus, majority of their liquid net worth in retirement or in their later years, I should say, is in 401ks, deferred comp plans, 403bs, or retirement plans or IRAs, isn't because that's the next best thing since sliced bread or anything like that, nor is it particularly because of the manager you hired. Now, those are important factors, don't get me wrong, because you get tax deferral, you also get good management. Those matter. But what matters the most is that it is typically, and I'm speaking here from 19 years of experience being a financial advisor, it is typically the only thing in a client's household that they are consistently adding to over 20, 25, or 30 years every 2 weeks on a consistent basis? Ask yourself that right now. Are you doing that same methodology, or what we call dollar cost averaging, where you're basically putting new fresh dollars every 2 weeks or every month into another account other than your 401k? Likely no. In fact, if you're a client listening right now, you've heard me mention this concept to you as I bring into other asset classes, things like a brokerage account or a trust account or something like that we can add into. You can use the same philosophy, all right? That's how you grow that simple, measly $100 example, thinking like, oh, it's only gonna double in 8 years. That's crazy. Well, remember, that's on one stagnant, one-time $100 contribution. Imagine you were adding in $5 every 2 weeks to that. Then you do constant returns, constant math on that, and that's where you start building this snowball. And that's over time, back to the penny analogy or this grain of rice fable, right? It's quickly how much those small little things start doubling over time. And you gotta give it time. That's the thing. And I think more than anything I wanna share today is someone needs to hear that. I wanted to come out after a couple weeks, taking some rest, resting my voice a little bit, meeting with our clients and just going through some things. I wanted to come out and just hit the nose on a good oldie but a goodie, as they say, right? In fact, Albert Einstein's famous quote about compound interest, he said, compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world. He who understands it earns it. He who doesn't gets screwed. Now, that last part was a little bit of a paraphrase by Brad Barrett, but you know what I'm saying. Friends, this is a really key, important factor. Don't be looking over your shoulder thinking you're doing something wrong or the grass is greener with this person or this model or that model. Friends, find your allocation, find that advisor that you can sit with that looks at everything, not just an investment account, the whole picture, okay? And then continue on the path with constant communication, review meetings every year. That's what's gonna get to the success of your overall financial picture. I wanna thank you for listening to the Make Your Money Matter show. And as always, make sure to go to our website again at onecapital.com. Again, download and subscribe to our show so you get weekly episodes delivered right to your mailbox. And as always, remember, before acting on anything discussed today, speak with a financial advisor near you about your specific situation. Or again, if you'd like our help, you can reach us at 805-410-5454. And until next week, always remember to make your money matter.
The information in this show is educational and general in nature and does not take into consideration a listener's personal circumstances. Therefore, it is not intended to be a substitute for specific individualized financial, legal, or tax advice. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a final decision.